way you survive is you continuously transform into something else. It's this idea of continuous transformation that makes you an innovation company. Bonjour. A very good afternoon to one and all present here. Honorable Speaker, Mr. Parag Shah Sir, Principal in Charge, Dr. Atmaram Pawar Sir, Vice Principal, Dr. Varsha Pokharkar Ma'am, and Vice Principal and Dean, Dr. Janvi Rao Ma'am, President of IIC PCP, Dr. Sharvil Patil Sir, Vice President, Dr. Dipali Bansode Ma'am, MHRD IIC President, Dr. Pothirajan Sir, teachers, and all students. Hope you all are in good health. Well, I, Vidhi Khatri, will be the host for the day, and I consider it my utmost privilege. Innovation is a process to bring new ideas, new methods, or new products to an organization. Keeping this idea of innovation ahead, we here at IIC PCP foster and encourage innovation as one of our core values. IIC, which stands for Institutions Innovation Council, is a non-profit organization set up by the MHRT. IIC has successfully set up its cell in many higher organizations to facilitate innovation, successful entrepreneurship, and startup ecosystems. It gives me immense pleasure to share this that Pune College of Pharmacy is one of those few institutions having its own IIC cell. So, the topic for today's discussion is orientation session on innovation. It gives me great honor to introduce to you the finest entrepreneur, founder, and chief mentor of MIDAS, that is Management, Innovation, Design, Arts, and Social Science, an institute dedicated to creating and building an ecosystem for entrepreneurs. He is the founding chairman of Flame University, which is India's first liberal arts university. He is considered the pioneer in bringing liberal arts into India. He also is a serial entrepreneur and a pioneer in the real estate industry. He is also the chairman of Snap Group, India's biggest distributor for Nestle, Pepsi, Voltas SharePoint, and Kimberly Clark, having his offices in Pune, Hyderabad, and Bangalore. As a chief strategy coach, he has a distinguished leadership style exhibited through his unique coaching method apt for the business and the entrepreneur running it. He also has won recognition for his work in education by being awarded the Business Acharya of the Year 2016 by Entrepreneur Magazine, which is the world's largest media house entrepreneurship. He is also the recipient of the Visionary Leadership Award by DNA Group and has been on the jury of International Innovation Centers and also awarded the Icon of Education by Minister of Education. And Parag Sir's inspiring journey is published in a book called Entrepreneur, where he shares his learnings as an entrepreneur. We are so thrilled to have you among us, sir. Sir, I'll request you now to enlighten us and share your views about today's topic.
See, for me, it's very difficult to talk about innovation without having the component of empathy and observation. One must have the ability to put yourself in the shoes of others, and one must have the capacity to observe others, without which you cannot innovate. And before I begin, I want to distinguish the difference between creativity and innovation. See, creativity is more a mental process, whereas innovation is bringing your ideas to fruition and making commercial exploitation of an idea. Right? So, having said that, we can begin our question answer session.
So first of all, we'd like you to share your views, like a few uh, things you want to share us about the topic and anything you want to enlighten us about the topic. Anything you want to share?
See, today, the world is changing at such a fast pace that it's impossible for a person to keep pace with the changing environment. And what is happening is people are getting too focused on their skill sets because they believe that that's what going to help them survive. But I believe it's exactly the opposite. For example, I changed my profession 3 times in my life. You are going to change your profession probably 5 or 6 times in your life, and your grandchildren are going to change it maybe 20 times in their entire working life. because the momentums have changed dramatically. My grandfather didn't change his profession at all. My father didn't change his profession. I changed it 3 times. You change it 10 times. Your grandchildren will change it 20 times. So, what the youth today needs is five components which I consider very important. The five C's I call them, which is creativity, critical thinking, communication, collaboration, and compassion. Unless and until these five skills are there in an individual, it's going to be impossible for him to survive in the current environment. If you think you being an engineer or a pharmacist or a doctor is going to be enough for you and you specialize in a particular field, it's going to become redundant. For example, if somebody wanted to become, let's say, a pharmacist, is he going to be doing R&D? R&D could well be developed by artificial computing itself, or robotics will take over a doctor's profession. You can't become a surgeon because dental procedures, heart procedures are slowly being taken over by robots. So artificial intelligence is taking over human life very rapidly, and before one realizes, one is going to become redundant. So unless and until you have the capacity to have these five C's in you, it's going to be impossible for you to survive in the future environment. Maybe not in my lifetime, but certainly in your lifetime, you're going to need these five key skill sets. What is creativity? Creativity is the ability to think out of the box, right? To be able to question the status quo,
Yes, sir, absolutely.
look at issues in 360 degrees angle, and be able to frame and reframe the questions. Okay, for example, Einstein was once asked if he had 1 hour to save the planet, how would he go about it? He said he'll spend 50 minutes framing the question. Within 10 minutes, he'll find the answer. So, how you frame the question is far more important than finding the right answer, which is what critical thinking is all about. And communication. We Indians think that if you have a great idea, you've made it big. It's not enough. You have to be able to communicate your idea to all your stakeholders. The Porter's 5 formula, which talks of 5 stakeholders that every organization has, is the shareholders of the company who have a different set of needs and demands and expectations from the organization. The customers have a different set of needs and demands from the organization. The employees have certain needs and demands from the organization. The suppliers have certain needs and demands from the organization. And the government wants to maximize its revenue from the organization. So unless and until you are able to communicate your idea to all the five key stakeholders within the organization, it's going to be impossible for you to survive, which is communication. And compassion, because I think capitalism without compassion is going to lead to a revolution. Unless and until we give way to our greed, and I believe that this generation is very well aware of it, and capitalism without compassion is not going to survive. And collaboration is very important because one key skill set is not going to be enough for you. So unless and until you are willing to collaborate with others, learn from others, engage with the environment. See, sitting at home you can learn things, but how are you going to engage with people? That's far more important than sitting at home and doing a distance learning course. It's not enough, right?
Yeah.
So I believe that innovation is going to be the key to survival for the future generation. Disruption is going to become the key word, and unless and until we are willing to accept disruption as a fact of life and look at it more as an opportunity and less as a problem, we cannot survive.
Absolutely right, sir. I completely agree with you on this part.
Right. So would you like to now go ahead with the questions?
Yes, sir, sure, definitely. So first question we have is how is strategic orientation a major factor in determining innovation capabilities, especially in business innovation?
So let me first explain to you what is strategic orientation. Strategic orientation is the capacity of the leadership to convey and communicate the vision of the organization to all its stakeholders, all the employees, right from the suppliers to the customers to the employees. Everyone must know where the organization is headed, and everyone is contributing to the growth of the organization, and they take enormous pride. So all stakeholders have to buy into the vision of the organization. That is what strategic orientation is all about. For example, at Midas, let me give you a case in point. One of the things we do is before our batch starts, we invite all our employees and tell them that our Shastra says Guru Deva Bhava, Matru Deva Bhava, Pitru Deva Bhava, Atiti Deva Bhava. Every student entering our campus is our Atiti and we have to take care of them like our guests. So when the students walk in, every employee will greet them with a namaste, right? So
Yes.
we tell the students we are not your service providers and you are not our consumer. We are your teachers. But people down the value chain have to understand that every student is a key stakeholder and he needs to be treated with utmost respect. Then the next thing we do is we tell students to actually work with our employees. So the first 3 days, what they do is we have a concept called the humans of Midas, where the whole focus is on empathy. So what we do is we make every student work with one sweeper, with one kitchen helper, one waiter, one cook, one poli bananari maushi. Everybody they work with one person or the other, and they spend 3 days with that person. They eat their meals, they sleep with them, they sweep the floors with them, they clean the utensils with them, and they come back much chastened, realizing that they belong to a privileged background. All right, and then they begin to empathize. So there is a mutual respect between the employee and the students. Now this is strategic orientation to my mind. All
Wow.
right.
So that is, yes, that is incredibly, I can say like a best definition anyone could have for this. So the question is how to ensure that the promising new ideas for innovation are not prematurely shot down.
See, unless and until the organization's leadership understands the value of innovation, unless and until the organization understands the leadership of the organization understands the value of innovation, they must have the capacity to look forward, to be able to envision the future. Let me give you a case in point. Look at Kodak. Kodak made a statement sometime in 1994 or 95. They said they don't see traditional photography being overtaken by digital photography for the next 25 years. Now, I remember something had said, some great man had said, that when someone says something is unlikely to happen, be sure it's going to happen. So that's the time I realized that digital photography is going to take over conventional photography. Kodak is out of business now. They did not have the vision for the future. They should have caught on to the bandwagon. When Sony came out with their first digital camera, they should have said, hey, that's a fantastic innovation. Why don't we work on it together and produce cameras? You have the technology, we have the technology to produce cameras, let's do it together. But Kodak ignored them. And today, see where Kodak is. It's gone for bankruptcy. So, unless and until the organization has the capacity, the leadership in the organization has the capacity to look forward. Traditionally, what has happened is organizations are headed by finance people. Finance people are number crunchers. They are very focused on numbers, whereas marketing people are on the ground. They have their ears on the ground and they understand where the organization is headed, what the customer's needs and wants are, and what the customer exactly wants. So it's very important that the leadership takes into account what is being said by every stakeholder in the organization, right down from your security guard to your VP in marketing, to your VP in finance, to VP in production. Everybody must contribute to the growth of the organization. So it's very important that strategic orientation begins at the top, but it must percolate down the value chain. Every employee doing any small work must keep the vision of the organization in mind and help the organization achieve that vision. At the end of the day, he must ask himself, how much and what did I contribute to the growth of my organization's vision? How close am I in contributing to the vision of the organization? Once the answer to that question is yes, he should be able to sleep peacefully. This is what I tell all my employees in all my businesses, that this is the vision we have and we all have to achieve this and all of us need to contribute to this vision. So when I talk to my staff, I tell them that my dream is to create 10,000 entrepreneurs who must employ 500 people, and these 500 people must take care of 4 Indians' health, welfare, and education. That is the way I want to impact 2 crore Indian lives, and these people must in turn create 5 more entrepreneurs, and those 5 must create 5 more. So the multiplier effect of whatever we are doing is going to be humongous. The other thing I want to tell you is that traditionally most people think that businesses happen in the corporate sector. That is not true. 85% of India's business happens in the unorganized and marginalized sector. Let me give you a case in point. Let's say there is a car driving by. At a signal you stop and somebody comes and starts selling you Christmas caps during Christmas time. Come Holi time, he starts selling you pitchkaris. Come Diwali time, he starts selling you crackers. Come Independence Day, he starts selling you flags. Now, if there is a big organization, imagine the amount of time it will take to change your product mix every 1 month. Impossible. Large organizations do not have that capacity. So 85% of Indian business actually happens in the marginalized and the unorganized sector. The person who is running that business is himself the CEO, he is himself the CFO, he is himself the CXO, and he takes decisions on spur of the moment, which is the beauty of this business. And one cannot afford to ignore these small businesses also.
So, the next question we have is, so where do you see the biggest innovation opportunities? For instance, what would it take for the innovative product to get into the market in half the time?
Yeah, I don't believe an organization should deploy too many resources in launching a new product or an idea. I believe in the lean startup method. Now, the lean startup method states that you cannot assume this is what the market wants. You must be able to be in a position to understand what the customer wants. So there is this concept called the law of diffusion innovation. The law of diffusion innovation states that approximately 16% of the people, 2.5% of the people are creative whenever you launch a product. So when the LED TV came into the market, it was costing $40,000, which is the equivalent of approximately 30 lakhs. Today it's available for 30,000 rupees. So people who bought the LED TV, they didn't buy it for the company that was selling it. They bought it for themselves, right? So 2.5% of any new product that is introduced in the market, 2.5% of the people are always creative. 13.5% are what are called early adapters. Now these early adapters are people who are waiting for the product yesterday. So when an Apple phone is launched, they stand in a queue to buy the Apple phone. Whereas it's available off the shelf 7 days down the line. Or when a Salman Khan movie is premiered, people will stand in a queue to see his film. Whereas it's available like 3 days down the line, you walk in and you see it. But these 13.5% of the people love Salman Khan movies so much that they don't mind standing in a queue and waiting to see his film. Okay, or let's say a cricket match. If somebody wants to see MS Dhoni play, he will take the trouble of going to the cricket stadium, stand in a queue, bear the heat, scream his head off, come back much tired, but he enjoys the day out. Whereas most of us will like to stay at home and watch it at home on the TV, right? So the 13.5% early
Yes.
adapters and the 2.5% creative people need to be contacted. And these 16% of the people, you need to make a minimum viable prototype, talk to them about your product, proposed product, keep innovating, so build, measure, and learn, and then you'll finally launch your product. So and the next 34, after the 16%, 34% are early majority, and 35% are late majority, and the balance 15% are laggards, right? So the early majority will not buy unless and until the early adapters tell them, hey, this is a good product, buy it. So for example, when Apple came out with their Apple phone or that iPod, I used to use the Walkman. But when my son told me, Papa, you must buy the iPod, it's a beautiful product. I said, what is the use? He said, it's very small, it stores 1,000 songs, you can play it in any order you want. I said, wow, that's good, I want to buy it. Now he had seen somebody use it. That person who used it was the early adopter, and I was the early majority. Okay, so the first 16% you must contact and you must talk to them, build a minimum viable prototype, quickly learn, build, measure, and learn, and then only launch the product. Take the case of Colgate. Colgate has something like 45 different brands in their own product line. So there is a Colgate Fresh, there is a Colgate Mint, there is a Colgate Confidence, there is a Colgate Ayurvedic, and people get confused because Colgate believes that there is a market for mint products, there is a market for Ayurvedic products, there is a market for standard Colgate which was used by generations together. So from my childhood, I was used to using Colgate. Now I have switched over to Close Up because I get confused when I have to buy a Colgate toothpaste. So Colgate lost its market share because they did not get in touch with early adapters, did not find out what they want. So one must get in touch with early adapters, understand their needs, give them a minimum viable prototype, build, measure, and learn, pivot if required. Take the case of Instagram. When Instagram was launched, it was a geotagging site. All right. So when Instagram was launched, it was a geotagging site,
Yeah.
and they quickly realized when they contacted the early adapters that people don't want to have a geotagging site. They want to have a place where people can easily share pictures. So they pivoted and they launched the Instagram as we know it in its current version now as a place where you can easily share photographs. And look at the valuation it got,
Yeah.
right? So it's not a question of how soon you should enter the market. It's a question of how surely you should enter the market.
Yes, definitely. Agreed. So next question is, what is your philosophy on innovation, and specifically, what do you see as your role in bridging the internal and external perspective?
Like I told you, in innovation, I always encourage my employees to give me suggestions. Saurabh will walk up to me and say that, sir, we need to market our product this way. I hear him out, I think about it, I back him, and I'll introduce it. The other day, my security guard came and said, sir, बच्चे लोग आते हैं एंट्रेंस पे वो ये नहीं करते हैंड सैनिटाइजर यूज नहीं करते. So I called the students. I told them, look, you must do this for the safety of everyone. You are young, but there are a lot of old people like me, who are likely to contract COVID. So please don't break the rules. Now, what did I do? I said nothing doing. That's not enough. If somebody doesn't sanitize himself thoroughly, please message his name to the program office. So the program office would take down the name of the person, call that person over, request him to go sanitize himself, would accompany that person to the extent that he feels ashamed, right? So this is how you sell your innovation idea to the intrinsic stakeholders. To the external environment, you must come across as a company who gives a unique user experience to the customer. For example, my son owns a company that sells, men's accessories. So his entire focus all along has been to give a unique experience to his customers. So his packaging is very focused. He's come out with a coffee mug that feels like an Apple product. If you see the ratings he has nothing less than 4.5 ratings on Amazon, and it's because he is focused on creating a unique user experience. So innovation does not merely mean, and please remember, there is nothing like a perfect innovation. Innovation is a continuous process. It has to be continuously innovated till the point that you have reached a point where the sales starts plateauing. You have to keep innovating.
Okay. Yes, sir. So that was a really a good example we all can use. So the next question is, how to make sure that our ideas are scalable, like diminishing marginal unit of input for each unit of output.
So let me explain the concept of law of marginal diminishing utility. What that means is that for every incremental innovation that you
Sure.
do, you do not get the same return on investment. So, for example, when the cars came in the market, you had a simple speedometer and you had a fuel gauge. Then there was a little upgradation, electronics came into the picture, and then you started having a digital display of your, right? Then you started having improvements on that. Then the car would automatically park. So there is incrementally innovation happening every day. Today, even if you buy a standard car like a Hyundai i10 or i20, it has all these features. It began with a Mercedes S class having this, and today a Hyundai i10 also has it. So tomorrow you cannot distinguish yourself from your competition by saying that, look, I have these features in my product, right? So your diminishing
Yes.
utility begins to crop up there. So at such time you have to go for disruption. So I don't think Mercedes has even thought of introducing a car that is battery operated. Tesla has been, you know, pushing for electric cars, and that's going to be the future of the world. Whether we like it or not, whether many people are going to get unemployed or not, the fact is that the electric car is going to take over our lives. 15 years from now, every other car is going to
Yes,
be
yes. Yeah.
electric car. So innovation by
Hmm.
itself is not enough. Sometimes disruption is required. Sometimes you need to disrupt the entire environment. You need to disrupt everything and ask yourself, go back to your basic question. For example, let me one of the things I do in my class is I tell the students you have to design a restaurant with a wacky idea. So they say okay. So they come back with the idea that okay, we will have a restaurant which is going to serve food to the IT people, right? So I said, what are you going to? I want to serve them healthy food.
Yes.
I said, okay. Then I tell them that okay, what are the basic assumptions one has for having a restaurant? So they list it out. I say, what is a restaurant? What is a restaurant? What is a given in a restaurant? So there's a menu card, right? Then there is a table and a chair. There is a
Yeah.
waiter who's serving food. The food has to be hot. So I tell them, supposing there is no kitchen. So what are your basic assumption? Assumption is that food has to be served. Can you not have a restaurant without serving food? They say how? I said, well, you can tell people you can come in and have your lunch, your dabbas in the restaurant over here. You just enter, pay an entry fee or you pay a monthly charge. Come and sit here in the air conditioned environment, have your food over here and walk out. That can be a revenue model. Then you create a restaurant without a menu. So they say how? I say you go into the restaurant, the chef will come to you, he will tell you today I bought these fresh vegetables, I bought this fresh meat, what can I make for you? And he'll cook it quickly for you. Right? So then they say, what about not having any
Yes.
kitchen? I tell them, yes, what you can do is you can ask the lady who's accompanying the man or the man who's coming alone, what would you like to cook? You go ahead and cook it for yourself. It's a unique experience you're giving the person. So people who want to learn cooking by themselves will want to go into that restaurant and cook for themselves. That is what disruption is all about.
So thank you so much for this interactive session. It was indeed an amazing and inspiring session. So now moving on to further for the vote of thanks. So I would like to invite our student president, Miss Maitri Kumari, for presenting you to the vote of thanks.
A warm and hearty greetings to one and all present here. I, Matthew Kumari, on behalf of IIC PCP, would like to extend our sincere thanks to Parag Shah sir, who graced us with his presence, taking out time amidst his busy schedule. I would especially like to thank our principal, Dr. Atmaram Pawar sir, our vice principals, Dr. Varsha Pokharkar ma'am and Dr. Janvi Rao ma'am, MOE's Innovation Cell President of PCP, Dr. C. Bodhiraja Sir, IIC President, Dr. Sharvil Patil Sir, IIC Vice President, Dr. Dipali Bansore Ma'am, and all the faculty members who help in the regulation and functioning of the cell. I would also like to thank all the volunteers who contributed to the success of the event. Thank you. Thank you so much for your cooperation. And thank you, sir.
Thank you very much.